It is a pleasure to serve under your chairmanship, Sir Desmond, and I thank the Honourable Member for Sunderland Central for bringing this debate. I would like to start by thanking Ellen Roome for her determined work in fighting to highlight this issue. Her courage and her stoicism in pursuing this cause has been hugely impressive, and Parliament would not be debating this today were it not for her impassioned commitment. This e-petition has garnered some 126,000 signatures in support of calls to give parents and guardians the right to access social media accounts for their children. And we've heard many important contributions from members this afternoon, and I'm sure that parents across their constituencies will be grateful for them to doing so. Honourable members for Cheltenham and for Darlington, who paid tribute to Ellen Roome and has shared her own words. Honourable members for Sunderland Central and South Devon spoke about the refusal of social media companies to release data citing legal restrictions. The honourable members for Worcester and for Lowestoft spoke of the impact of harmful content on children's development. And my right honourable friend, the member for East Hampshire, spoke about how current legislation gives control to children as young as 13. With the vast majority of children now having access to a phone or a tablet by the age of 12, children are exposed to an enormous range of content online. Many children are being exposed to social media content which is inappropriate, dangerous, and poses substantial risks to safety and development. There has been a growing crisis in children's mental health, with recent research highlighting that 32% of 8 to 17-year-olds state that they have viewed something worrying or upsetting online content in the last 12 months. Yet only 20% of parents of children and teenagers in this age group report their child telling them they had seen something online that scared or upset them during the same time frame. Evidence has shown that the widening of access to the internet has seen more children moving away from social interactions, with a subsequent detrimental impact on mental health and social development. We welcome much of the work that this government is doing in relation to protections for children by building on the foundations laid by the previous government. But could I ask the Minister what is being done to increase mental health support for children? In January last year, the Labour Party pledged to introduce specialist mental health support for children and young people in every school, as well as open access children and young people's mental health hubs in every community as part of the Child Health Action Plan. And though I appreciate it's not part of her brief, could the Minister outline what progress the government is making towards delivery of these pledges as they relate to this topic more broadly? Keeping children safe online in the current media landscape is a challenge that will require agile and adroit legislation that simultaneously keeps pace with technological developments but also reflects cultural usage of media platforms. We also need to recognise the power that social media giants now hold, and ensuring accountability will be a key aspect of any legislation. We must ensure that parents have the right to be able to ensure that their children are safe from harm on platforms, whilst also ensuring that, especially in circumstances where children may be being mistreated. I've previously heard Ellen describe how social media companies have abdicated responsibility in assisting in the disclosure of messages that could help to identify how a tragedy has occurred. In the case of Jools Law, TikTok had not released any of the messages on his account, and Instagram Meta had released some, but not all. Any parent should be concerned that they will not have the right to access details of their child's online life, even if it is suspected to have contributed to their death. Parents like Ellen are currently required to take legal action in order to pursue the release of such information. And even if you have the financial resources to do so, why should any parent be forced to go to such lengths just to find out what may be at best critical information, at worst closure? The majority of parents do not even have access to such resources. As a newly elected member, I will not stand here and pretend that the previous government got everything right. But the Online Safety Act was a crucial and positive step forward to keeping more children and young people safe online, so that fewer families have to face situations like those we've heard and spoken about today. One aspect of the Online Safety Act where this situation has been addressed is through Section 101 of the Online Safety Act, where Ofcom has the power to support a coroner's or procurator fiscal's investigation into the death of a child via the data preservation measure. This came into effect under the previous government in April last year, and it is under this section that the amendment that would be Jools Law would sit. Whilst the current iteration of Section 101 is a step in the right direction, it is not an easily accessible outcome, and it is still a solution that can only be put into effect following a tragedy. In order to prevent tragic outcomes in all too many situations, parental access to social media accounts could address this issue. And I would like to ask the Minister whether the government has plans to introduce legislation giving parents and guardians the right to access their child's social media accounts and the messages contained within them. And if they do, would this build on existing legislation within the Online Safety Act? There are further considerations that must be taken into account. Though parental access to child's social media account may sound like a simple and prudent solution, not every child will be in a position where parental figures have that child's best interests at heart. Children who are vulnerable, for example, in a family with an abusive parent, there would also need to be safeguarding considerations. A child who may be seeking help, communicating domestic abuse to friends or organisations, may then find their only avenue of escape compromised. Further to that, there may also be instances where a parent could use their child's social media account to gain access to information about other children and teenagers via their own child's account. There are therefore wider implications about granting parents unrestricted access to the information of children other than their own and unintentionally making unsolicited inappropriate contact easier. So I would ask the Minister to consider how such parental access rights could be designed in order to simultaneously give parents the ability to monitor their children's safety, but also to ensure children themselves have the privacy they may need to facilitate their own safety, and how such measures could be designed so as not to be exploited by any of the parties that are subject to them. I was reassured to see the Secretary of State for Science, Innovation and Technology meeting bereaved parents who have lost children after being influenced by harmful content online. I also welcome the publishing of the Secretary of State's draft Statement of Strategic Priorities for Online Safety in November last year, which provided clarity on the framework that the government will expect the independent regulator to work within. The Secretary of State has stated that the government will implement safety by design to stop harm occurring in the first place, and we should consider whether the expectation should fall on users themselves to take precautionary steps to avoid severely harmful content. Given how instrumental algorithms are in pushing themed content to users' feeds, I would ask the Minister what plans the government has to give users the ability to opt out or reset these algorithms. Mr. Chairman, we support parents in raising concerns about content they do not want their children to see by requiring that sites take measures to remove content as soon as it is flagged. Since the introduction of the Act, we have seen many cases where the response from platforms has been far quicker than before, and we would welcome a detailed plan on how the government will ensure that all companies act quickly and lay out what the cost of them not doing so will be. It is right that services must assess any risks to children from using their platforms and set appropriate age restrictions, ensuring that child users have age-appropriate experiences that are shielded from harmful content such as pornography or violence, self-harm, eating disorders, or even suicide. This is why the last government tightened up age restrictions by requiring social media companies to enforce their age limits consistently and protect their child users. But many parents still believe that these age limits are too easily circumvented by children lying about their age. The government talks of ensuring that age assurance technology to protect children is being effectively deployed. However, I would ask how the government intends to ensure this and how it intends to ensure that companies are investing in the most up-to-date technology to facilitate this. Will the government proactively stress test this capability, and if so, how? Mr. Chairman, for all of this, Ofcom plays a vital role. As an evidence-based regulator, its task here is to regulate the trust and safety systems and processes. And whilst their role is not to police individual pieces of content necessarily, it is to ensure companies have the correct measures in place to minimise harms to users. At the end of last year, we heard how the government had informed Ofcom that they would need to build more safety measures into these systems. I would welcome the Minister to outline how the government will aid Ofcom in their aims and ensure that any government support needed will be supplied. These regulations would not be anything without empowering Ofcom to take action, which is why we gave it powers to issue fines of up to £18 million or 10% of global revenue, whichever is higher, or criminal investigations into senior managers if they fail to comply with enforcement notices. And could the Minister outline what steps the government is taking to make sure that Ofcom brings forward its children's safety codes and guidance in April? As we've all seen, technology keeps moving. Advancements are constantly made, and the risk of digital progress outstripping the pace of legislation is an all too real prospect. We must embrace technology and understand that the internet and social media can be a force for good, embedded in our daily lives, whilst also understanding that checks and balances are essential if we are to ensure a safe online environment for not only today's users, but those newly entering the online world. It is for the government to guarantee an environment conducive to users of all ages, but also to ensure that parents can have the confidence that the online environment can be made as safe as parents themselves strive for the home environment to be. Thank you.
I call the Minister.